y'all, welcome to my channel. This is the Survivor's Guide to Life. My name is Jessica Lang, and this channel is all things trauma, the brain, and healing. So if that's your jam, click that subscribe button down below so you can be notified every time I upload a new video. And head on over to Instagram where you can follow my page. I post more inspirational, motivational, mental health related topics, and you can reach me by DM or whatever. I'm very active over there as well, and I'm trying to get to the 10K followers so that I can get the swipe up feature and have a nice little connection and everything flows nicely. So that'd be great if you went and followed me on Instagram and then came back over, of course, and watched more of my videos. So shameless plug over. Sorry I have been absent. I have been incredibly sick for the past week and a half. Finally have my voice back and I'm not like blowing my nose so often. So hopefully we can get through this video with very few challenges in that realm. So today's topic I've been wanting to do for quite some time, and it's based off of a book that I read a couple years back when I was doing my agency work, and I picked it up again recently and just really noticing the parallels and how important it is to kind of destigmatize a lot of behaviors that we think maybe are cultural, when in fact they are actually learned behaviors that are based off of some past traumas. I thought this would be a really interesting topic and I hope you guys enjoy it. So the book I'm going to talk about today is Posttraumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Degruy, and it's an amazing book. Honestly, everybody needs to read it. The premise of her theory is that due to 400 plus years of bringing Africans to the Americas as slaves and forcing them to endure incredible hardships, which is putting it mildly, that African Americans, our ancestors, my ancestors, developed coping strategies, right, based off of having post-traumatic stress disorder, untreated post-traumatic stress disorder, and that this continued not just because of slavery, but also slavery with Jim Crow and all the way through the Civil Rights era, and even continuing on today, and how a lot of these behaviors that seem like they're just their culture are actually not really seen by Africans living in Africa, but you see them in African Americans or British Africans, or like folks in Jamaica, like anywhere where there was slavery as business for hundreds of years and then they were freed. You see certain behaviors that are related to untreated post-traumatic stress disorder that have been passed down from generation to generation, and now they are learned behaviors and we accept them and take them on as culture, when in fact it's really untreated post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic slave syndrome defined. Post-traumatic slave syndrome is a condition that exists when a population has experienced multi-generational trauma resulting from centuries of slavery and continues to experience oppression and institutionalized racism today. Added to this condition is a belief, real or imagined, that the beliefs of the society in which they live are not accessible to them. Even though she bases it, like she solely looks at the African American experience, I think also, especially if you read the book or watch any of her YouTube videos where she's done live talks and she shows pictures of like lynching, black people being lynched, and like there's white people in their business suits and like little white children who are watching this, like what kind of impact that has on those people as they're developing. Because one of the things I did when I first was doing my series and unpacking the DSM, when I read to you about post-traumatic stress disorder, you do not have to directly experience a trauma in order to have post-traumatic stress disorder. You can get post-traumatic stress disorder by hearing about a trauma, secondhand information. So I just wanted to read and highlight a couple of little points in this book, and then really encourage you to read the book, watch her on YouTube, and comment down below so we can have a discussion about what your thoughts are about this topic that is not talked about really at all. I just happened to learn about Dr. Joy Degruy because I worked in a nonprofit agency with foster children, and my wonderful colleague slash friend who has her own YouTube channel where she talks specifically about culture, and I'm going to link it down below. Her name is Marissa Brooks, and it's Bloom Into Your Best Self, and she's amazing. But she happened to bring Dr. Joy Degruy to my agency. So we were lucky enough as an agency to hear her, and we heard her twice and learned so much. And I bought the book, I bought her accompanying workbook, I use it with my clients. It's so helpful. And one of the reasons I'm also talking about this is like if you're a white person, like I want you to really look at your own assumptions that you have about Black people or African Americans, whatever phrase you know the person prefers. What assumptions do you have based on your own fears and your own stereotypes? But also, like, as far as Black folks, like what kinds of behaviors or things that we do that we think are cultural, or we think, oh, you know, this is something that all people do, but really this is something that was passed down as a maladaptive coping strategy that we no longer need. But also look at instances where maybe we do still need to have some of those strategies in place to keep us safe, right? So when I read that, I think of things that I hear on a daily basis, or we all hear about on a daily basis in the news, in terms of, and this is going to be controversial, and it shouldn't be, but you know, the amount of unarmed Black men, women who have been shot, right, by police officers, when, you know, white people call the police on Black folks and there, you know, 6 cops show up, or somebody gets shot and there's no investigation and this person's let off, and that it plays into that kind of, that those old stereotypes and those old fears that honestly, like, even today, I was born in 84, and I remember having very distinct conversations with my mom, who was born in 54, about, you know, working 10 times as hard as a Black person just to be equal to a white person. You got to be careful going into neighborhoods where there's no Black people, or it's predominantly white, especially at night, because they're going to look at you funny, or they might start following you. And this, I mean, I can just speak as somebody who's lived in the States and lives here in Israel now, that my reaction, my stress level as a Black person in Israel is completely, it's so low. I mean, I walk down the street any time of night here in Tel Aviv, and I'll see police and I don't feel afraid. I don't feel afraid that they're going to question why I'm in this upscale neighborhood and not in like the bad neighborhood. Nobody, like, the police don't harass me. The police don't harass Black folks. Like, that's just not an experience that I have, or my friends who live here who are African American have. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's something that I don't think about. And I remember the first time walking home, probably at like 11 o'clock or something after Shabbat, and seeing a police car and feeling like, oh no, is he gonna bother me, when I first got here. And they didn't, you know, they just moved on, lived their life. And it's like, but when I'm back in the States, you know, there's that visceral reaction. If I'm driving or whatever, oh no, there's a police officer. What is he going to do? What is he going to judge me about? Like, that is a stress response. That is an example of hypervigilance that I know probably any Black person listening to my voice could recognize. And that's based off of information that's passed down from people in our own family who have had negative experiences with the police, but also like some of those other experiences that we have had. And then past generations with, you know, the police and interactions with white people. And, you know, I've heard numerous stories of older Black people who won't even go to the doctor. And if you read Michelle Obama's book, she's talked about that with her own father. He refused to go to the doctor. Why? Because there's a history of medical professionals mistreating Black people, doing experiments on us. Hello, Tuskegee, you know. And so these are very real experiences that our ancestors have had. They've told us about them, so now we're hypervigilant around us, and that's a hallmark of PTSD. So it's a learned behavior based off of actual experiences of other people. Even if we've never had those experiences, we still feel like a visceral reaction, like, okay, this is something that I need to be worried about. Something else that I really appreciated that she did in this book, I remember Roots coming out and watching it when I was, you know, preteen. Actually came out in the 70s, but they used to always show like once a year during Black History Month, they would replay Roots. And I remember watching it with my mom and just being, oh my gosh. And I eventually read the book, but I don't know if slave accounts are like really what's being talked about in terms of slavery. I feel like it's been watered down a lot subsequent to my generation, probably has always been. And one of the things that she did was, because she did a lot of research, was she actually read different accounts of the slave experience, so that you're reading this and you can get this visual of what the day-to-day experience was like for an African who was enslaved. And you can start to see like, wow, that is so traumatic. And again, that was the whole point. So in the book, I mean, it's basically lots of trigger warnings, but she breaks things down by category. So she talks about raping, she talks about what punishment looked at, and that looked like whippings, and she talked about how and the tearing, the separation of families, and how the black family, how, you know, part of one of the things that we do as a culture today is like, your mom's best friend is your auntie, right? It's not just blood, it's anybody who's in your community. And part of that is actually a very African experience that we brought along with us, but it's also that our ancestors brought along with them. But it is also something that we had to learn, because children were separated from their parents, husbands and wives were separated, and what we know about attachment, and looking at that, you know, looking at the ways in which we speak to our children, coming from the mentality of, you don't want the master to notice how amazing your child is because they're going to sell them off because it's profit. So what does the mom do to protect her child? She degrades him, she puts him down. No, don't notice how amazing my child is. No, my daughter's ugly, whatever. Anything to kind of take the notice off of your child. And I can tell you, to this day, I have had similar experiences with my mom. And I know friends and people in my family who've had similar experiences with their parents who don't build them up, where nobody sang their praises and told them how amazing they were, and focused on what they can do and how they can achieve. It's almost like intentionally keeping you small. A lot of that is that learned behavior, not to get noticed. But then it's also that, you know, you got to be 10 times better and trying to lessen that blow of, you know, maybe you won't make it out. And there's so many layers and messaging that goes behind it. If you are a white person, you may not understand this level, but any black person that, you know, is listening to me is like, oh my God, I've had something similar. I've had a similar experience, and this is how it's affecting me today. And it comes from this legacy of slavery that she talks about in Posttraumatic Slave Syndrome. So there you have it. That's, you know, I tried to make this video nice and quick. I highly, highly, highly recommend you picking up the book Posttraumatic Slave Syndrome, especially if you're a mental health professional working with the African-American community. You can also watch her videos on YouTube where she does lectures, and you will just be astounded. And go with it with an open mind. It's not a book about blaming or saying, oh, white people did this and, you know, we can never heal, but it's helping you to examine your own behaviors. This is for everybody. Examining, and this is what I want my channel to be about, to examine your own behaviors, to unpack all these layers and try to figure out what it is that, and have like more awareness and more intent with the things that you do, the things that you say, how you perceive yourself, how you perceive others, so that you can heal, so that you can be happy, so you can be free and live a peaceful, happy, healthy life. So if you read the book or watched some videos, comment down below, give me your thoughts. I'd love to have a conversation. You can also jump over to Instagram, DM me, also follow me, and let's really have a conversation. So again, thanks for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.